Have you ever felt like the world we live in today is simply a reflection of what has already happened before? Wars, economic crises, revolutions, and even the downfall of mighty empires. It almost feels like history is warning us, whispering the echoes from the past. From the crumbling of Rome to the collapse of the Soviet Union, from pandemics that reshaped societies to revolutions fueled by anger and inequality, the signs are always there. Yet time and again, humanity repeats the same mistakes. Why do we fail to learn? Why does the past seem to play out again in slightly different costumes, but with the same tragic results? In this video, we'll uncover powerful lessons hidden in history, patterns of the risen and fallen, rebellion and change, innovation and destruction, that prove one thing: the past is not gone. It's alive, warning us about the future. The rise and fall of empires. One of history's most striking and unavoidable lessons is the cycle of empires. Civilizations do not simply rise and shine forever. They are born, they grow, they dominate, and eventually they crumble. The reasons for this collapse are often eerily similar across time and geography. Unchecked ambition, corruption within leadership, overexpansion that stretches resources too thin, and the slow decay of the very values that once made them strong. What makes this pattern fascinating is that despite having countless examples before them, each empire has believed it was different, destined to last forever. Yet, time and again, history proves that no empire is eternal. Take the Roman Empire, perhaps the most iconic example in history. At its peak, Rome ruled vast lands stretching from the deserts of the Middle East to the cold forests of Northern Europe. Its roads, aqueducts, architecture, and legal systems were marvels of human achievement. For centuries, it seemed unstoppable, a civilization so powerful that its name became synonymous with greatness. But beneath the grandeur of marble columns and legions of soldiers, cracks were forming. Political corruption seeped into the Senate, emperors grew obsessed with luxury and personal power, and the economy struggled under the weight of endless wars and taxation. Overexpansion meant armies were scattered thin, defending borders that seemed to stretch endlessly. In the end, Rome did not collapse because of one mighty invader. It rotted from within. The barbarians who eventually overran Rome were simply the final push to a structure already hollow at its core. Centuries later, the British Empire would follow a similar trajectory. At its height in the 19th and early 20th centuries, Britain controlled more land than any empire in human history. From India to Africa, from the Caribbean to Australia, the Union Jack flew over nearly a quarter of the globe. People famously said, "The sun never sets on the British Empire," and for a time, it seemed true. Britain's navy ruled the seas, its economy flourished on global trade, and its culture spread worldwide. Yet just like Rome, its reach became its weakness. Managing vast territories across different continents proved costly and complicated. Independence movements rose as colonies sought freedom, and maintaining control required ever more resources. Internal pressures at home, class struggles, industrial changes, and political divisions further weakened Britain's hold. Slowly but surely, one colony after another broke away, until the once mighty empire shrank to a shadow of its former self. The Ottoman Empire provides yet another illustration of this historical rhythm. For over 6 centuries, the Ottomans stood as a dominant force bridging east and west. They were a beacon of Islamic civilization, renowned for their culture, architecture, and governance. Yet, over time, bureaucracy grew rigid, corruption spread, and leaders struggled to keep pace with the rapidly modernizing world around them. Internal power struggles drained their unity, while military defeats exposed their vulnerabilities. Known as the sick man of Europe in its later years, the Ottoman Empire eventually collapsed after World War I, carved up by foreign powers and national movements within. These examples, Rome, Britain, the Ottomans, show us that no matter how powerful an empire appears, decline is inevitable once leaders ignore the warnings of history. Power is fragile, and arrogance can blind rulers to the dangers within their own walls. And as we look at today's superpowers, the United States, China, and Russia, we cannot ignore the signs. Economic challenges, political polarization, military overreach, and social unrest are reminders of the same forces that toppled empires before them. History is whispering a warning to us even now. Be careful. The fall comes faster than you think. Revolutions that shook the world, Another pattern that repeats itself across history is revolution. When ordinary people are pushed too far, when inequality becomes unbearable, when corruption chokes opportunity, and when rulers ignore the cries of the masses, society explodes. These uprisings are not accidents or sudden sparks out of nowhere. They are the inevitable result of years, sometimes centuries of injustice. And when they erupt, they follow a rhythm that is almost identical across time, reminding us that the anger of the people is one of the most powerful forces in history. The French Revolution of the late 18th century stands as one of the most dramatic examples. At the time, France was a nation divided between a wealthy, privileged elite and millions of starving peasants. While the nobility feasted in palaces and the clergy enjoyed immunity from taxes, ordinary citizens struggled under crushing debt, skyrocketing bread prices, and unfair taxation. Families could not feed their children, yet they were forced to carry the weight of the nation's financial burdens. This staggering inequality ignited a fury that no king could contain. By 1789, protests turned into riots, the monarchy was toppled, and King Louis XVI was executed. What followed was chaos, bloodshed, and eventually the rise of Napoleon. But the lesson was clear. When leaders ignore the basic needs of their people, no throne, no palace, and no army can keep them safe forever. Fast forward to the early 20th century, and the Russian Revolution repeated the same story, though in a different setting. The Russian Empire was ruled by czars who clung desperately to power while the nation collapsed under war and famine. Millions of peasants lived in poverty, while the royal family enjoyed unthinkable luxury inside palaces like the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. World War I only made matters worse. Soldiers starved on the front lines, food shortages gripped the cities, and political repression silenced dissent. Out of this storm of suffering rose the people's cry: bread, land, and peace. This slogan captured the desperation of the masses, and it became the rallying call for revolution. The Tsar was overthrown, the monarchy abolished, and Russia was reborn under a new, radical system. Once again, the people proved that no empire, no matter how powerful, can ignore the suffering of its citizens forever. Even in the modern era, history continues to repeat this lesson. The Arab Spring, beginning in 2010, saw millions of citizens across the Middle East and North Africa rise up against authoritarian regimes. In Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, and beyond, years of political oppression, corruption, and lack of opportunity had created a pressure cooker ready to explode. When a Tunisian street vendor, Mohamed Bouazizi, set himself on fire in protest of government mistreatment, his act became the spark that lit a wildfire across the region. Ordinary people, young and old, flooded the streets demanding freedom, justice, and dignity. Some regimes fell while others brutally crushed the uprisings, but the message echoed the same one from France and Russia. When inequality and injustice reach their breaking point, revolutions are inevitable. What ties these revolutions together is their common cause. None were random. None were isolated. Each one was born out of years of economic disparity, political oppression, and the suffocating weight of corruption. The French peasants of the 18th century, the Russian workers of the early 20th century, and the Middle Eastern citizens of the 21st century all shared the same frustration. A system that benefited the few while crushing the many. And when leaders failed to listen, the people rose. The message from history is clear. Revolutions don't happen overnight, and they don't happen without reason. They are the product of leaders ignoring the struggles of their people. And when rulers grow blind to suffering, when they silence voices instead of listening, when they exploit instead of protecting, then the people will always find their voice again, louder, stronger, and unstoppable. History warns us that unless the lessons of past revolutions are remembered, the same fires will rise once more. Technology, the double-edged sword. Throughout history, technology has always been one of humanity's greatest forces of change. With every new invention, societies are reshaped in ways that those living at the time could scarcely imagine. Yet technology is never purely good or purely bad. It is a double-edged sword. Every revolution it brings follows the same cycle: invention, resistance, adoption, and ultimately transformation. What begins as a spark of innovation often unleashes waves of fear, upheaval, and resistance before finally becoming a permanent part of daily life. The Industrial Revolution of the 18th century provides one of the clearest examples. From email and online banking to social media and virtual workplaces, and now we stand at the dawn of yet another transformation, one that may be even more profound: the rise of artificial intelligence and quantum computing. These technologies promise to redefine the very foundations of human society. AI already powers everything from medical diagnostics to self-driving cars, from personalized ads to language translation. Advocates celebrate it as the key to unlocking progress in healthcare, science, and global problem-solving. But others fear its darker side: mass unemployment as machines take over not just manual labor but also cognitive work, manipulation through AI-driven misinformation, and even existential risks if artificial intelligence grows beyond human control. Quantum computing, still in its infancy, could shatter our current systems of encryption and security, rewriting the rules of global power. For the first time, technology is not just changing how we work or live. It could determine the very survival of nations and civilizations. What history warns us is that every wave of innovation comes with both opportunities and dangers. The Industrial Revolution gave us progress, but also poverty and exploitation. The digital revolution connected the world, but also fractured it in new ways. The coming age of AI and quantum computing could bring unimaginable progress, but it could also unleash chaos if societies fail to adapt. The lesson from history is clear: technology is not destiny. It is a tool, and its impact depends on how humanity chooses to use it. Will we harness it for growth, equality, and progress? Or will we repeat the same mistakes, ignoring the consequences until it's too late? History as a mirror. Ancient thinkers already saw the cycle of repetition. The Roman historian Dionysius compared his own empire to fallen civilizations like Persia and Macedonia, predicting Rome's eventual collapse. Later, philosophers like Cicero and Aristotle compared societies to living beings, born, growing, and eventually dying. Machiavelli echoed the same. Political strength breeds peace, peace breeds laziness, and laziness breeds ruin. The cycle starts anew. In the Islamic world, the 14th century scholar Ibn Khaldun described asabiya, social solidarity. He observed that nomadic tribes united by loyalty could conquer cities. But once these tribes became rulers and enjoyed luxury, their unity crumbled. Corruption followed, and new tribes rose to take their place. Sound familiar? It's the story of every empire. Even in modern times, the pattern persists. Napoleon's disastrous invasion of Russia in 1812 eerily foreshadowed Hitler's failed attempt in 1941. Both leaders ignored the lessons of history, believing they could succeed where others had failed. Both fell victim to Russia's brutal winters and unyielding resistance. Afghanistan, often called the graveyard of empires, tells the same story. From the Persians to the Mongols, from the British to the Soviets, and finally the United States, every foreign power that tried to dominate Afghanistan eventually failed. The warning was always there in the past, but no one listened. The unchanging nature of humanity. So why does history repeat? The answer is simple: human nature does not change. Thucydides, writing over 2,400 years ago, observed that the events of future history will be of the same nature as the past, so long as men are men. Ambition, greed, fear, and pride, these are constants. Wars, revolutions, and collapses happen because people repeat the same mistakes. Leaders crave power, societies grow complacent, and people forget the warnings of the past. The costumes change: togas, crowns, or modern suits. But the play remains the same. Even today, with our advanced technology and global awareness, we face the same dangers: growing inequality, climate crises, political corruption, and the temptation of war. The past has already shown us where these paths lead. But will we listen this time or march blindly into another cycle of collapse? History is more than dates and names. It is a warning system. Every empire that rose and fell, every revolution that shook nations, every invention that changed the world, they all leave behind a message. The future is written in the past. If we ignore it, we are doomed to repeat the same mistakes. But if we pay attention, history becomes a compass, guiding us toward a better tomorrow. The past is repeating itself right now, in our politics, in our economies, in the way nations rise and fall. The question is, Will we learn, or will we fall into the same traps? What do you think? Are we heading toward progress or another downfall? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and please don't forget to subscribe for more insights into the hidden lessons of history.